Hello, the internet. My name's Laura, and welcome back to Bearded Dragon Diaries. So, for the past 3 or 4 weeks, I have been doing research on bearded dragons. I've just been going to videos on YouTube, watching them all, just on any type of different thing, absorbing all the information, and it's now all in my head, right? This is always the first step of my research, is just get as much information as I can, and then that way the thing, like the commonalities, like start to stack up. Like I'll hear the same thing on different channels, and then I'll be like, okay, that's probably true because a bunch of different people are talking about it. The bad thing about it, of course, is that sometimes it can become a little bit overwhelming because it's like all this stuff, and like, can I really remember all of it? You know, what's the important bits? What are the things I really, really need to remember? And that's where I always go to the same type of thing, and that is I make a list. That is how I organize my thoughts. When I get too overwhelmed, I make a list of all the things that I need for whatever task. I mean, this happens to be all the things that I need for getting a bearded dragon, you know, but I can do it for other things too. Anyway, so the first thing, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go through my list that I made, and then I also went online and was looking up prices. I can understand why a lot of people don't put prices on these videos because, like, it's just so variable, and like it depends on what options you're gonna take. It depends on how big a tank you're gonna want. It's gonna depend on how big, you know, like all these different variables. At the same time, I wanted to be able to give you some sort of an idea because I wanted some sort of an idea, like about how much is this going to cost me when it's all said and done. The nice thing is you can get a lot of this piecemeal, so like I'm going to say a number, and it's not like you have to like shell that all out at the same time. That being said, I'm still going to hugely generalize, just because, I mean, if you can find a deal, you might want to go for something more high quality as opposed to lower quality. You might, you know, whatever, like it just is. I'm also going to say that, like, I'm going to keep this little disclaimer down at the bottom because, like, I am not guaranteeing any of these prices. I'm definitely not guaranteeing these prices in your area. I am not guaranteeing these prices, like, in a year or two, you know. So I'm just going to, I have this little thing down here that says, you know, whatever. You're going to have to go look up the prices for yourself, but hopefully this will at least give you a general idea. So the first thing that's on the list is very obviously the enclosure. The tank or cage or terrarium or whatever it is that you're going to keep your bearded dragon in. Enclosure, you know, people have different words for it. Anyway, so for me personally, I am planning on building my own enclosure, cage, terrarium. And I priced that all out in, you know, again, in general. I have a lot of the tools already you need, like, you know, a power drill, and like the bits and stuff like that. So obviously the number that I give for this is without any of the tools that you would need. And if you don't happen to have those tools, obviously the cost is going to be higher unless you can borrow it for somebody. But for me, it came out to being about $120 to build the melamine cage. If you look up melamine cage construction, a lot of them are very similar. But it's basically, it's like 4 feet long by not quite 2 feet high-ish. And then I think, I don't have the exact numbers. I am going to be doing a video when I make that cage though, and then I'll obviously have all of this information, like more of a breakdown. But like I said, I added together all of the things that I would actually need to buy for this, and it came out to about $120. There might be a few things I forgot. I might get a few things for cheaper, you know, but that's about how much that would cost. Now, if I were to go out and buy an enclosure of some kind, I found a like a regular fish tank, like the long just fish tanks that you get in the store, are usually about $100, depending on the size. That's for a 40-gallon, it's 100-ish. And then obviously up if you're gonna get a bigger tank than that. You also then want to include the screen cost, which is about $20. So that would give you the same enclosure. So, you know, that's about the same price as you may have only the enclosure that I'm building is going to be larger than a 40-gallon tank. So I'm actually going to get more space for the same price. Some people say that a 40-gallon is a little too small for an adult dragon. You know, and that's part of the reason why I just wanted to go ahead and build my own. You can also get like specific reptile enclosures, because with the tank, you reach down into them because, you know, it's all glass on all the sides. You have to reach down into them, which means you have to move the lights and all that kind of stuff. They actually have reptile enclosures, which are a tank, but then it has the little doors that open or slide. And then that way you can get the bearded dragon out of the front. Those I was looking at, those could be around $200. There is a kit that's around $200, I think, that has like the enclosure and a whole bunch of like other stuff on the inside. I remember seeing an unboxing of one of those, and it had a lot of stuff inside that I was kind of like, I wouldn't end up using that. Like it has, we're going to talk about like substrate in a minute, but like it had a carpet thing, and it had dried worms, and it just had stuff that I was going to end up not using, and so I'm like, why would I pay for that? But if you want to just get the enclosure and then get some of the extra goodies, you know, there you go. Okay, so that is just the enclosure itself, like 4 walls and a top. You could put the bearded dragon in it, and it will be in a thing. The next really kind of important thing are obviously lights. So you need 2 lights for your bearded dragon to be able to stay healthy. One is a UVB light. So there are 2 brands that I've heard of. Reptisun and Arcadia are like the only 2 names in providing good UVB. There's different sizes, different lengths. Like there's different lengths, obviously, like you get. But there's also a T5 and a T8. The T5 is older, the T8 is newer, I'm pretty sure. It changes the distance at which your dragon needs to be from the UVB light in order to get the benefits of the UVB from the UVB light. You're generally going to, you can just buy the bulbs, or you can buy a bulb with the fixture that you need. I have that the UVB bulb itself is from $25 to $35. Obviously, again, this is depending on size and whether you get the T8 or the T5. You could also get a fixture with a bulb for around $70 to $80. And buying a holder on its own is probably going to be around $40 to $50. Again, all depending on size and blah, blah, blah. But I'm probably going to end up just buying one already in the holder and then just buying the bulbs to replace it. A note, even though this is not about the cost, well, I guess it's kind of about the cost. You need to be aware that these bulbs don't burn out, but they stop putting out UVB. The Reptisun ones, I think, run out in about 6 months. Like they say you have to replace them every 6 months. Like I said, they don't burn out. So like the light doesn't go out, but there's no more UVB being put down on your dragon. The Arcadia ones apparently last for a year. I assume that those ones are more expensive, but then you have to buy them less often. Like, so I feel like from the prices that I saw that the Arcadia bulbs are just better in terms of cost, even though you might have to put out more at the very beginning. Take that for what it is. You also need a basking light, and So this is a bulb that is going to be put on a specific spot inside your cage so that the reptile can get, so the bearded dragon can get very warm, and that helps aid in digestion. It helps him produce D3, which is also what the UVB light does. That D3 is what helps the bearded dragon digest their meals. If they don't have that, then they can't digest their food, then they don't have food, you know, they don't get nutrition and all that kind of stuff. Basking lights, however, from what I can tell, there's no special rays that need to come out of it. You can buy a general purpose, just incandescent bulb. Obviously incandescent, you don't want LED because LED very specifically doesn't put out heat, but just the normal old bulbs, screw bulbs that like actually these are probably LEDs. But anyway, the regular type of screw bulbs that you can't touch when they've been on because they're way too hot, that's what you want. And then obviously you get a thing to screw that into. Depending on the type of enclosure you're gonna have, you either want some sort of a socket that you screw it into, or you want what's called a clamp lamp. Those are the metal domes that like reflect the rays down, and you can like set them on top of things. If you get so the light bulbs themselves are maybe $5 to $10. You want to get daylight ones so that the light is more white as opposed to yellow. But other than that, like I said, you can just get just a generic. You're gonna watch wattage based on like how close it's gonna be, how much heat it puts out, and all that kind of stuff. Like obviously, if it's too hot, you want a lower wattage. If it's too cold, you want more wattage. But anyway, $5 to $10 for that bulb. If you're gonna get a clamp lamp, that's $5 to $10. But I've also seen suggested that you get a dimmer. That means that you can get a 100-watt bulb, and then if it's too hot, you can just dim the bulb. And then if it's too cold, you can undim the bulb. Those are usually about $15. So overall, we're looking at about $100 for lighting and light fixtures. So like everything that it takes to put the correct amount of light onto your dragon, around $100. Again, this is going to vary depending on the size that you get. It's going to be either more expensive for the bigger ones or less expensive for the smaller ones. But so we're looking at $150 to $200 for the cage, $100 for the lights. Also for your cage, you are going to want some sort of a temperature/humidity gauge. That is in your cage. It tells you the overall, it is about this warm in here, and it's about this humid in here. You know, you're aiming for a certain heat, you're aiming for a certain humidity, and that little gauge will tell you, so that when you walk by, you can look at it and be like, that's fine. Or you look at it and you're like, oh my gosh, I have to change something. Those are $5 to $10, not really all that expensive, which is great. You know, you can get digital, you can get the one with the little arm that goes back and forth, whatever floats your boat. I actually have a little humidity monitor, temperature and humidity monitor down here for my houseplants. I have a lot of houseplants. So it is 50% humidity, 53% humidity, probably because I moved it to a different area of the room, and 73 degrees Fahrenheit. So this is what it can look like. The ones for reptile cages tend to not be digital. I'm not sure why. It might just be that they're cheaper, but this would probably work just fine. It's also suggested that you get a temperature gun, which is like a little gun thing, infrared, that you point it at a surface and it tells you what the surface temperature is. Because you've got the thermometer in your cage, but that tells you like the ambient temperature. If you want to actually test your basking spot to see what temperature the basking spot actually is, it's probably a good idea to have one of those. Those can be $10 to $30 depending on the brand that you get and that kind of thing. There was a pretty big range in those. I assume the more expensive ones are more accurate. I have not tested any of them myself though. The one thing that I'm not going to go into a ton of detail on is the substrate. There are two reasons for this. One, substrate itself is very highly contested, especially in bearded dragon communities, and I am planning on going with tile, but there's probably plenty of people who are going to be like, oh my god, you don't want to do that, you want to have like this or bioactive or blah blah blah. There are so many different types of substrates and mixtures and all that kind of stuff that you can do if you want to go the more natural route, or you can literally use paper towels on the bottom of your cage. So like we're talking like 0 to 50 or 0 to $75 depending on like what you do, and I feel like that's just too wide of, I mean, I'm giving you the 0 to 75, but like that's just such a wide range that I don't think it's even worthwhile for you. Paper towels, linoleum are some of the cheaper options. Legit bioactive substrate where you're putting in isopods and springtails, I did not even look into how expensive that was, because that's not the route I'm going right now. But it's not cheap. If you're watching this trying to be like, I want to save money, you're probably not going to go bioactive. So I'm just not. In general, and again, I am just going like wild ballpark figure, probably around $350 just to get your setup, because I have not talked about food. I have not talked about supplements, different insects, all that kind of stuff. I was going to include food and insects in this, but when I started looking at prices of like crickets and mealworms and all that kind of stuff, it's so varying. And at this point, I still don't exactly know how many insects the bearded dragon is going to eat per day or / per week. Like some people are like, oh, it's like 80 to 90 a day, which is like over 500 a week. You know, I just don't know. I don't know enough yet to feel like I can even give you guys a good estimation of what that's going to cost, because then you also have, like, are you going to feed more crickets? Are you going to feed more mealworms? Are you going to feed more dubia roaches? Are you going to feed rapashi, the little mixed stuff, you know, how often you're going to give them calcium, often you're going to give them vitamins, you know, like, so the food thing I'm not going to touch yet. I definitely would like to put out a video on that, but I feel like that's something where I need a little bit more experience with the actual dragon before we get into that. So about $350 for your setup. It's going to be X amount more for feeding them. The vitamin and the calcium, you know, that's like buy it once and then it's going to last you for a while. The insects, I mean, they're not super expensive, and they're even less expensive if you get a colony going and then like let them breed, and then you produce some of your own. Then you don't have to, you might still have to buy some, but like you won't have to buy nearly as many, which is also what I'm planning on doing. And that's why, I guess that's the other reason why I don't really want to try and estimate that, because I'm hoping to never be in the situation where I actually have to buy feeder insects like with any regularity, you know, just to supplement my colony in case, you know, I don't produce enough or something like that. So part of it is I just don't want to do the work for something that I probably am not going to use. I know that isn't great for you guys because you're like, oh, you said you were going to give us the numbers, but I mean, that's just where it is. I will, however, say, if you have a local reptile place, that's a great place to get feeders, because then you're helping support a local business and you don't have to pay shipping. If you don't have a place around that does sell feeder insects, Josh's Frogs and Rainbow Mealworms are two places that I've been looking at are the two places I've been looking at to buy my starters for, you know, my colonies, and if I need to, you know, order in feeder insects, I can do that. Rainbow mealworms has like all of the different feeder insects. They're just called rainbow mealworms. Josh's frogs, they have lots of feeder insects. They're pretty great. They also have like these crickets that are like teeny tiny. And they like guarantee that they can get you these like just hatched crickets. I thought that was interesting because hopefully I won't ever need them that small, because by the time I get my bearded dragon, it should be able to eat like not a normal sized cricket, but like a slightly older than that cricket. Remember that the 350 that I'm quoting, the 350 is just a general, I'm going to say it again, it's just a general estimation. That is also not including your dragons. Looking at prices in stores of the dragon itself, PetSmart, Petco, if you buy from them, you're looking at $80 to $100 or so. If you go to like a more specialty shop, they're usually a little bit more expensive, but I feel like they're probably getting them from more reputable breeders, and thus I would be more happy with the quality of the dragons. And then if you go online, you can get them anywhere from 100 to like 1,000, and that depends on colors, morphs, the time of year, and then shipping is also like overnight shipping, so you're paying like $40 to $50 to get the dragon overnight shipped to you. So that is also a cost. And again, that can just vary wildly on what you decide to get and where you decide to get it from. And then obviously feeder insects and all that kind of stuff. In general, you could spend a ton. I don't think it's going to cost, like, if you're not like going and doing anything wild, like you want a wiblet or something like that, which is like a very rare still morph, like rare morph. You know what? It's not rare. Uncommon morph. It's still a new morph. Wiblets are still a new morph, and so they're still pretty expensive. But if you're not trying to get something like that, you could probably get away with like under $400 to $500 just for everything, at least for the first like month. Maybe not even as much as 500. I would say between 4 and 5, I think, is my overall just guesstimation. Again, I'm not guaranteeing. I'm not guaranteeing any of these prices, but you know, that's what you're looking for at. And like I said, again, you can do this kind of piecemeal. Like I'm planning on setting up my feeder colonies before too long, and so all the costs associated with that, because there are some extra ones. You do actually have to house it and feed them and like keep them warm so that they'll breed and all that kind of stuff. That is a little bit extra money, but then you save money over the long run, so you know. But I'm planning on doing that, and I probably won't be getting my bearded dragon for a while still. So like, you know, you can spread it out. You know, I'm gonna get the cage, the enclosure this month, and then next month I'm gonna go and try and get lights, and then next month I'm gonna, you know, all like that. And you can, you know, break it down a little bit. Break it down. I'm too white to do that. Okay. Anyway, so that is pretty much what I wanted to go over on this video. Part of it is to get it all organized in my head. Part of it is to give you guys that information, show you what I've been doing. If you've got any questions, go ahead and put them down there. Remember, I'm not guaranteeing any of these prices or whatever. If you find something cheaper, that is great. If you can only find stuff that's more expensive, I mean, I can't do anything about that. But if you have any questions, or if you'd like me to direct you to some of the places that I've found these prices, I can do that. You can ask for that in the comments, and I'm very happy to share any of my sources because it's just all stuff that I found on the internet. And if you like this video, go ahead and like this video. If you would like to see more of the Bearded Dragon Diaries series, then go ahead and subscribe, and I'm trying to put out a video a week. And thank you so much for spending some of your time with me today. I will see you guys in the next video. Okay, bye-bye.